I've spent a decent amount of time now playing with S-Log. So S-Log 2, which is sort of the beta version of what has now been updated to S-Log 3, which I've said a million times on this channel already. You're sick of me hearing it. It's a flat picture profile, allows you to pull more color out of an image, and it's a longer processing, but gives you some better stuff. But I've learned quite a bit from this experience, and one of the things that this process has really solidified in me as I've gotten more experience with it is that I kind of think that I prefer S-Log 2. That's the beta version. Now, the big difference between S-Log 2 and 3, the updated version being 3, is that 3 gives you even more color control. You can push colors further before it starts to look distorted and gross and unnatural. But I think that S-Log 2 gives you a better workflow. You get a better result out of your basic, S-Log to Rec 709 than you do with S-Log 3. And so without getting, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that per se, because it doesn't really matter and none of you care, but what it really assures me, right, because old cameras, right, so this is a Sony 7S right here, and this camera only does S-Log 2. But recently, I've started working with this camera, which is the Sony FX7. It's a cinema camera, and this one does S-Log 3. This actually does an S-Log 3 Cine, which is a slightly different version, but ultimately the same thing. And this camera, with this lens, this rig, approaches the $7,000. Actually, it approaches the $8,000 range. While this camera here, you can easily get for $500, maybe even less, used on Amazon or probably $300 on Marketplace. And then this camera, which is the A6000, that, you can easily get this for $300 on Marketplace, probably less. I think I paid $500 for this 5 years ago, and I got 3 pretty nice lenses along with it. And with this giant stack, I'd have to say my 2 favorite cameras to use are the cheaper ones. The 2 cameras that I feel more confident I'm going to get a more beautiful shot on are these 2 cheaper ones. Now, if I'm going to go film a professional interview that needs to look all corporate and needs to look great in low light or blah, 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 I'm going to choose this FX3. But it's very high quality. The workflow is much more complicated in terms of, now you're dealing with a different picture profile. You're dealing with a few more steps to really get it to color grade looking nice. It's going to look great just in its standard mode. And these will look probably less great in their standard mode. But if you want to do fancy artistic things like S-Log, this is going to give you a better workflow. And by workflow, I mean the steps between filming, going out and shooting, and your final product looking nice. There's less steps. And so it's just a faster, more enjoyable way to be artistic, I guess, for the lack of a better word. I feel like I'm having more fun when I'm using cameras like this. Also, you got to understand the weight difference between these 2 cameras is massive. This one is so much lighter. This one also, I just don't care about that much, so I'm more likely, it's already all beat to crap. I throw it in a bag. This one, I'm like super kind of spooked because of the price tag. And so I'm more likely to take risks with this camera. I'm more likely to go for the shot because I know, well, if I ruin it, and it's whatever. But this, it's like, I don't think I'm going to even attempt to get that shot because of how expensive it is. So I've had one of my biggest, statues of thought as a filmmaker or content creator, whatever title you want to use, is that you just absolutely don't need to have money to make great looking content or passable content even. I see so many people, both up-and-comers, beginners, and even prosumers falling into this trap where they feel like they need to get the best equipment. And I often default to a quote that it was actually my uncle, who is he's a computer animation teacher. And this was something that he said to his students that he said a long time ago, which is, you can buy the most expensive pencil in the world and it's not going to make you a better artist. And while that has some nuances to maybe even not being true, because there are certain limitations if you want to achieve certain things, overall, I love that sentiment. And I think that sentiment is so good, because the reason that your stuff doesn't look good, or that you're not impressing people with your work, probably has nothing to do with the camera that you're shooting on, or the lens that you're shooting on, or the quality, the actual like bit data of the footage. It probably has to do more with the composition, the lighting, your creative storytelling, what you're doing with your shots, your editing, all of these things that don't have a very high financial bar of entry, but have a higher bar of experience entry. And so, and I am no saint. I am have fallen victim to this, and continue to all the time, because new toys are fun. But you're always feeling like, I'm just not good enough, and you're kind of impatient. You want to get better with your work. And so it's very easy to do these sort of mental gymnastics to be like, well, if I just had a better camera, or if I just had that better lens, or if I just had that better whatever, I can make better content. And I have tried really hard to resist that for several reasons. One, frankly, doing a video every day, I've had so much experience with just using the stuff that is easiest for me to use, which is my cell phone, a GoPro, a little cheap camera that I can just keep on me at all times like this. I've gone up and hiked mountains. I'm not going to take a big old heavy, I used to shoot on the FS700, which I love that camera, but it's huge. And later in my life, I just now take this thing because, frankly, if I'm going to go film a freaking abandoned mine shaft, that's just cool. I don't need to make it look cool. I just need to capture it. And what I can bring to the table isn't making that mine shaft look cooler. I can only bring to the table something that is my creative experience, my creative storytelling of my experience, my perspective, and my lens of that mine shaft, which is all going to come down to composition, storytelling, editing. And those things have nothing to do with the kind of camera that I'm hauling up a mountain. And it's really sad to see, because I see people who are really talented, but or even whole production companies fall into this thing, because most production companies and most people who are like professional cinematographers, they often get themselves into debt, and they're financing equipment. And while that's not inherently a bad thing, it is just kind of setting yourself up for more unnecessary pressure while you're trying to, it puts pressure on something that you love. And there are many ways that you can put pressure on, a craft or a hobby, but financial pressure is one that feels probably the ickiest, because it suddenly turns something that you enjoy to doing into an absolute necessity that you have, an obligation outside of yourself to meet. So I've talked about it before with like how, the cell phone in your pocket is the only tool you need to create content. Some of the biggest YouTubers that I've followed in my life, they have some of the worst production quality. It's about the content that they make, the things they say, the stories they tell, the perspective, the vision that they have, being much better than the person who, everybody theoretically has access to a credit card and can go out and buy the nicest equipment, but not everybody has the ability to hone to do the hard work, which is to be better at something. And again, this is something that I'm only scratching the surface of. I have such a long way to go in terms of where I would like to be. Anyways, I don't know. So this whole color correction and picture profile has been a great learning experience for me. And I feel like over time, it's not there yet, but over time, this will be something that makes my work look better. Right now, it's still in a bit of a functionality test phase where I'm just going out and filming kind of nonsense. It's just repetition. I'm just in repetition, and it's not till I really feel confident in my exposures and things that I'll find a way to apply it into a workflow where it's secondary, because right now it's a very primary focus. But it has been refreshing to feel sort of a confirmation in my own bias, which is that you are able to do amazing things with the assets that you already have available to you. And obtaining more assets probably isn't going to change the quality of your work. It's not going to change the way you feel about your work. And frankly, I don't think it's going to change the way anybody else, I especially don't think it's going to change the way anybody else thinks about your work, because most people don't even know what any of that stuff is, especially when it comes to cameras and technology. I mean, even just like taking people assume this is like an old camera just because the lens doesn't match, because the lens is silver. People assume all the time, they think this is some kind of antique camera just because it's silver. People don't know. So what does it matter? And all the time I see people just put a matte box, which is like the cinema thing, on their camera, and suddenly everyone thinks they're like a better professional. So it's like, it's all arbitrary. It's all arbitrary anyways. Good night.